Remember to check out sarahsnakeshop.com for corn snakes and corn snake accessories, including corn snake morph books, t-shirts, notepads, masks, as well as other things.
Hey everybody, Sarah here. So today I have to film from a different location. I've been very busy and so I just have to film wherever I can this week. But today I want to go over all of the different Amel combinations with you guys. I know that I've gone over Amel types such as candy cane and creamsicle and things like that, but I want to go over what some of the actual amelanistic combinations look like. And I've done a video similar to this with anerythristic types where I show a lot of common anery mixes, so like Anery Sunkissed, Anery Charcoal, things like that. And so I'm going to do a similar video today. I'm obviously not going to be able to go over every single one of the Amel combinations. There's way too many out there. We have over 1,000 corn snake morphs, and so trying to go over everything that has Amel in it is not going to be feasible, but I will be going over all of the common ones for you guys today. Really quick before I jump in, I want to thank all of our members on this channel who make everything possible here. If you guys would like to become a member, it's $2 a month. It's very similar to a sort of Patreon where it helps me fund this channel. You can click join under any video to become a member, or if you are in the live premiere chat, you can click the little $sign in the chat and there should be an option for membership in there. That way you get all of the member exclusive content if you would like. I make a video exclusively for members every single week, so if you would like to get in on all the little extra fun videos that I make, becoming a member is going to be the way to do that. So first I want to start out with the typical amelanistic type. Now Amel is short for amelanistic, as I mentioned, and that basically means that you're removing the melanin. There are three main pigments in corn snakes and a couple of little extra ones, but the three main ones are melanin, which is the black or dark pigment, xanthan, which is the yellow pigment, the main yellow pigment on the snake's body, and erythrin, which is the red pigment. If you take away the melanin, you are left with amelanistic, which is just going to have the reds and yellows, and it's not going to have any of the dark colors. And typically they also have the red eyes as well. Now I'm going to be getting the majority of the photos of these combinations from iansvivarium.com. If anybody would like to learn about all of these and to see even more, Ian's Vivarium is an amazing resource, and it's where I learned the majority of my morph information, especially when I was first starting out. So if you would like to check them out, I will put a link to them below. They're going to be the most comprehensive list of morphs with photos that you will find online anywhere. We're going to start with the Amel Cinder combination, which is called Peppermint. In the Cinder video that I made a little while ago, we talked about how Cinder is actually not an Anery type, even though it kind of looks like one sometimes, and that is very obvious when we get into something like Peppermint. Peppermint is when you combine Amel with Cinder and you are left with this sort of white background with just some speckles of red left in the saddles. I'll go ahead and touch on Amel Palmetto. Amel Palmetto, essentially, if you know what a palmetto looks like, they are pretty much white with just little speckles of color here and there, and you're going to get the exact same thing with Amel Palmetto, except the only colors of speckles that you will get are the reds, oranges, and yellows. I quickly want to mention here that any of the pattern mutations I'm probably not really going to go over here, because if you mix amelanistic with stripe, it's just going to be a striped version of an amelanistic. If you mix Amel with tessera, it's the tessera pattern with the Amel mutation. So I'm mostly going to just be going over the color mutations with Amel. Amel Sunrise is a weird one because Amel Sunrise is pretty much the only type of sunrise that we really see. We have seen some Ultramel sunrises and maybe a few other sunrise types, but Sunrise is a very odd mutation. I'm not going to go over it specifically here, but basically they hatch out with little to no pigment at all and then get very vibrant very quickly. And then a lot of the stripe and tessera versions as they get older will sometimes lose color throughout the body. I'm going to mention Auratum and Orange here in the same place because they are very similar looking. So Auratum is the mix of amelanistic and Toffee, and Orange is the mix of amelanistic and Buff. And now we don't really know for sure if Toffee and Buff are the same mutation or different mutations. They're both sort of yellow looking. They don't have as much reds, and they're both dominant mutations, so it's really hard to tell and it's really hard to find out if these are the same mutation or if they are different. A lot of people who will breed them will say that they are different mutations, but I am going to put them here in the same place because they look so similar. They will be almost very butter looking or creamsicle looking, but normally they don't have quite as much like bright orange as a creamsicle, but they definitely have more orange than a butter, and that's how we determine the difference between an either Auratum or orange from a butter. A lot of times they will look very creamsicle like, but just different enough that you know there's something different going on. Since I mentioned butter, I will go ahead and put it here. Butter is the mix of caramel and amelanistic. I talked about caramel in one of my last videos. Caramels have no reds at all. They are only the yellow and black pigments. So if you were removing all of the reds, but you're enhancing the yellows, what you get is this very, very yellow snake, of course, like a caramel. And then if you take away the melanin, you just have this white and yellow snake. And that is what we see with a butter. Now we're going to get into the ones that look a little bit different. We're going to go to Blizzard. Now Blizzard is a mix of charcoal and amelanistic. Charcoal is also known as anerythristic type B, and the charcoal by itself is normally just a dark gray on gray coloration. So if you take away all of that black, what you're left with is sort of just white. Now you can get some of these with some yellow on them, and that is normally brought in by halo, but most of the time a Blizzard is not going to have much or any yellow at all. They're just going to be very solid white with very little pattern looking as adults. A very similar looking one to that is Snow. Snow is obviously one of the most common amelanistic mixes. It is anerythristic type A mixed with amel, and the difference between this and a charcoal is normally aneries will retain a little bit more color, and they're not just going to be your standard gray on gray. A lot of times they just have a little bit more color saturation going on. So snows are going to have a much more defined pattern usually. They're often going to retain more of that carotenoid yellow, which is yellow that comes in on the cheeks and the sides of the snake, and a lot of times they will have more of a pink tone to their saddles that the charcoal mixes just do not have. Another sort of similar looking one that I'll talk about here is Opal, and that is Lavender mixed with amelanistic. Opal's another one that typically has little to no pattern, at least in appearance as adult, but as babies they are usually very pink. And lavender, of course, in itself is named so because it's very purple looking. It looks like very powder purple, but if you take away all of the darkness out of the powder purple, you're left with more of a powder pink color. These are usually very obvious by the color of their eyes. They almost have the exact same color of pupil and iris, and that is very similar to Blizzard, but Blizzards are normally their eyes are going to be a lot lighter in color, whereas Opals are going to have a little bit more of that darker pink that's like more of a bright magenta on magenta, whereas Blizzards are just going to have a very, very light pink or very like powder white color. Also, the Opals have the ability to have more pinks in them as adults than Blizzards. Blizzards aren't going to show any pinks at all as far as we know. Like, I've never seen a Blizzard that has any pink on it, even when you mix red factor in. But if you do have an Opal or a Lavender line that is extra pink, that will show up in some of the adult snakes. Now I want to get into some of the Hypo mixes with Amel. These are going to be a bit more complicated. So there is such a thing as a hypomelanistic Amel, which means that it has the hypomelanistic mutation and the amelanistic mutation. Now if you have watched any of my intro videos, you know that hypo means less than usual. But if you have a or an at the beginning of a word, it means that it removes it completely. So essentially when you have hypomelanistic, amelanistic, the amelanistic is going to take away all of the melanin, and then hypo would just take away a little extra, or vice versa. Maybe hypo would take a little bit away and then amel would take the rest away. But essentially a hypo amel is just going to look like an amel. There really is no defined way to tell the difference between a hypo amel and a regular amel, because they both do the same thing. One of them just does it a little bit more extremely than the other. Sometimes if you have siblings in a clutch that are amel and hypo amel, you can kind of tell the difference, because the hypo amels will also be lacking a little bit of the saturation, but it's really not going to be a great way to tell the difference. When it comes to amel and hypo amel, the only way to tell is to test breed. There are also other types of hypo, such as Christmas or strawberry, and this also applies to both of those. You're not really going to be able to tell the difference between a Christmas Amel or a strawberry Amel versus just an Amel as well. You're probably just going to have to rely on test breeding for that. Now, a couple of hypotypes that are an exception to this rule, one of them being lava. Lava is a very interesting hypotype. So when you have a Lavamel, which is a lava Amel mix, you can usually tell that it's a lava, especially when you look at the eyes. Again, the irises and the pupils are going to be about the same lava red color in a lava Amel. You'll also usually see more bold red tones in an Amel lava as well, so it is easier to tell the difference between a Lavamel and a regular Amel, especially if they're in the same clutch. Another one of these is going to be Mandarin, which is Kastanie and Amel. Kastanie isn't really considered a hypotype. It kind of is, but it more moves around pigment than it does actually reduce pigment. When we mix Amel with Kastanie, we get an Amel that is very, very like brightly orange colored up in the face and head area, and that color kind of fades down toward tail. Usually a very like flamingo pink or salmon colored orange tones to them, which is why they are called Mandarin. And in fact, if you have an Ocotea Mandarin, that is nicknamed flamingo. Another hypotype that is very obvious to see is the Sunkissed Amel, and that's because Sunkissed is not only a hypotype, it's also a pattern mutation, so it makes these saddles larger. A typical Sunkissed is going to have fewer saddles because the saddles take up more space. Also have kind of a signature cheek pattern, Sunkissed do, where the pattern kind of goes up above a little higher, and then the lower part of the cheeks are usually going to be more white. So you may not be able to tell the difference just by color alone, but if you see that signature Sunkissed pattern, you're gonna know that it is an Amel Sunkissed. Last but not least that I want to mention, and this is more of an honorable mention, is Ultramel. Now, Ultramel is a combination of Ultra and Amel. Ultra is a hypotype, but it is related to Amel. It is the only one of these morphs that is actually related to Amel. And since it's related in a certain way, when you mix an Ultra with an Amel, you get a combination of the two. And so that is called Ultramel, and it kind of looks like something in between, where an Amel is going to have no melanin at all, and Ultra is going to have a slight reduction in melanin, but not too much. Ultras kind of look almost just like bright normals. You breed them together and you get sort of a mix where you have what looks like almost a brightly colored regular hypotype, and that is what we call Ultramel. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything specific that you would like to hear about next, or if there's anything in this video that I missed that you would like to know about. I can answer in a future Q&A. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video soon.